All right, guys. Hey, it's Dean, and this is my first video. A lot of you know me, and basically, my whole deal is travel. So, from the time I was 19 years old, started working for an airline, and now I live overseas. And I am still the go-to person for a lot of my friends and colleagues. But basically, I figured out there's a lot of people out there who have a tough time. Travel is confusing. It's a sensitive topic, and so I just want to help people get along and find a better deal out there. And that's why I decided to make this blog. This is what I hope is the first of many. There's a lot of things in travel. Travel has kind of died off over the past year, thanks to our friends at the pandemic. But I think that over the next few years, we're going to see, or over the next year, we're going to see a big change. And people will want to get out. They'll want to go out on the road again, as do I, right? A lot of us are trying to figure out when can we get vaccinated so we can go out and we can go live our lives free and all that. So, in preparation for that, I thought I would put together this vlog, put in some tips, how to buy low cost travel, how to go business class, all that stuff, right? So start. This is the first video. Thank you for tuning in, all two of you. But hey, we got to start somewhere, right? So I just wanted to first start about and talk. This is obviously big news in the airline business, and if you may or may not know, but it's Alaska Airlines joining oneworld. And Alaska Airlines, I've lived on the West Coast for a long time, and basically, Alaska Airlines has been a good, strong regional player for years. Really conservative airline, really focused on service, and gone from a full service carrier to staying a high service carrier, and not kind of going down some of the paths that other airlines have gone in pursuit of revenue. Um, Part of their function is actually utilitarian in the state of Alaska, where they are the service, right? And so that service is really, really critical. It literally links communities, brings groceries, brings mail, all these things in places that do not have roads. So Alaska is really critical there. But a few years ago, they bought San Francisco's based Virgin America Airlines, and Virgin America had started from nothing, and then all of a sudden grew itself into a pretty respectable national size carrier. Um, but basically, Alaska saw what was happening on the airline front, where you've gone from 10 major airlines in the US to three, and they knew that they had to grow. The purchase of Virgin America helped them increase their size significantly at San Francisco, where they have always been, as well as giving them some sizable operations at LAX, down in San Diego, again, where they'd always been. They've always served these markets, but it gave them a much more dominant presence, as well as some critical landing slots in Dallas and on the East Coast that they couldn't have gone out and bought. So it was really strategically a very smart move. All of a sudden, Alaska Airlines is a major airline thanks to Virgin America, um, and pretty much a household name through a lot of the country. But they were lacking something in that they had Delta Airlines moving in on their home turf in Seattle. And basically, Delta Airlines going after them wherever they could. This was formerly a partner, and then all of a sudden, Delta decided they wanted to try to build up Seattle as a hub. But what I think they underestimated was the loyalty to Alaska Airlines and the fact that the Seattle business community is really small and tight knit. So you've got Alaska Airlines, Starbucks, um, and Microsoft, all of which really, global players. But really, this hometown effect in Seattle really does come into play. So all of a sudden, you've got this major airline, and they had to do something, right? They couldn't go. They weren't going to go out and buy 777s and start flying to Tokyo, even if they had enough money to do it. It would be impossible to do, and they needed to leverage partnerships. Interesting thing I know that was said by the president during this discussion about Alaska joining oneworld was they weren't going to go out and buy wide bodies, right? They were going to stay a narrow body carrier, and that has always been their focus, never to deviate away from their recipe. So, but with this, it brings a lot of power to oneworld, but also for oneworld, it brings a really strong, good carrier into the mix, and this gives opportunities to Alaska that they haven't had before. So really a win-win. I mean, I'm a One World flyer. I've been a Star Alliance flyer, and for me, I'm thrilled that Alaska is coming in because I've always thought that they're a great airline. Years ago, I was on their advisory board, and they were one of the first airlines to do these kiosk check-in and that sort of thing. And that vision of having no lines at the airport. I remember taking this tour years ago at what was then the reopening of a new terminal, opening of a new terminal at Ted Stevens Airport in Anchorage, and they were focused on not having a line. Right? They wanted the automation to work so well that nobody would have to stand in line, and they pretty much achieved that goal, and other airlines actually followed that. So you've got a niche player, really high, in technology, took over a phenomenal brand in Virgin America, and then here they are. So now, if you're flying on Alaska, or if you're like me and you're a One World flyer, you're worried about where your status will go, right? So basically, Emerald status, same deal, right? Decent seats up front, lounge access, blah 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 blah. All of a sudden, you get that in Alaska, and major airports: San Francisco, Seattle, Anchorage, LAX, right? So all the West Coast hubs, and it's great. But if you don't have status and you live in one of these cities, then Alaska mileage plan status actually is worth a lot more to you all of a sudden, right? Whether you're flying Qatar, BA, Iberia, any of these airlines, all of a sudden you have this emerald treatment or sapphire wherever you are, right? And it's the mileage plan tiers haven't changed that much. So if you're a quick frequent flyer on Alaska, all of a sudden this opens up a world of opportunities, more so for their corporate customers, right? Delta Strong and SkyTeam, Alaska wasn't in an alliance, and they had a lot of partnerships. But because they didn't have an alliance, it was kind of lacking as far as what they could give to their corporate customers. Joining One World gives them the capability to do that much better. Now, here's the magic question, right? Depending on where you live, which is better, Alaska Airlines mileage plan or Advantage's One World, right? From American. And American has basically also expanded the partnership with Alaskan in the idea that they would be able to use that partnership rather than trying to build up the West Coast themselves, right? So American Airlines is always big in transcon, big on the East Coast, and big in the center of the country with that Dallas-Fort Worth mega hub. And in spite of the numerous mergers, US Air, America West, Reno Air, AirCal, all these airlines that American has taken over in the past, it has stayed focused on transcontinental, right? The middle of the country through Dallas-Fort Worth, and then the East Coast, right? But this basically allows them to fill a gap where they never were able to fill it themselves. But it's interesting. I put this up for comparison. If you are shooting for executive platinum on American, you have to do 80,000 elite qualifying miles, 25 or 95 elite qualifying segments, and you have to spend at least $12,000, right? And this has to be elite qualifying dollars, not any ticket, right? So basic economy, whatever it is you may be buying, right? And a discounted ticket doesn't qualify for a full dollar. So there are three kind of hurdles that you have to make in order to get this executive platinum, which is emerald status on American. However, if you're on Alaskan, you only have to do 75,000 miles, right? 90 segments on 6 on Alaskan, right? So rather than the spend limitation, you do have to fly 6 times on Alaska Airlines, but if you're cranking out 75,000 miles a year, chances are you are anyway. And the same thing with MVP Gold, you only have to do 4 segments on Alaska, and then MVP, just MVP Ruby, which is just 2 segments on Alaska. So it's not bad, right? Whereas if you're on American, executive platinum, which is the emerald tier, you got to do 80,000 miles and spend at least 12,000 bucks. I find a hard time spending 12,000 bucks on one airline, right? Platinum Pro, which is basically Sapphire, and then Platinum, and I think they have the different tiers in order to accommodate upgrade requests, right? But basically 60,000 miles or 40,000 miles plus $7,000 in spend or $4,500 in spend. And even on the lowest end of the tier, 20,000 miles or 20 segments or $2,000. Now at that level, it's not really difficult on the ruble level to spend 2,000 bucks. But again, right, this is one less hurdle that you have to count. But you have to take a lot of things into consideration: where you fly, where you travel, right? And that is probably more important, right? But it is, you know, if like for like and similar routes that you're traveling on, it does appear to be easier to get this One World Emerald status on Alaska Airlines rather than traveling on American's Advantage, right? But if you're in the heart of American country, chances are you fly a lot anyway, and this status is a breeze. Now, the other part of this too is that Alaska and American, and I saw this in a press release, are pushing for metal neutral partnership. In other words, you're treated the same no matter if you're on an Alaska plane or if you're on American, right? As long as you have the status. Now, this always applied for One World Premier status, right? So One World and you're on Emerald, you're gonna get the good seats. You're gonna get, you know, a little bit better treatment. And yes, even on my Emerald status, with an airline that hasn't always been friendly with American, you still get a free cocktail. So, you know, for what that's worth, right? $6. Yeah. But on top of it, right, you get the standard things: elite seating, lounge access where applicable, blah 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 blah. So, and it was funny. I flew on Alaska this time last year, in the heart of the pandemic, and they weren't in yet, and they weren't a partner with the airline that I have mileage with. But I was like, you know what, no big deal. Still a good airline, and in about a year, this is all going to be done. And so, and there it is, right? So I just want to look at this, and this is actually Alaska's Swiss strategy, and that's the thing about Alaska is they have always partnered with airlines that needed to be in Seattle or needed a domestic feed. So you look across the board, right, and it's every Aer Lingus, the One World carriers are marched with the logo, right? We have other really strong carriers that have been longtime partners of Alaska, and they're not out of the picture yet. So you look at Korean Air, Singapore Airlines, which is Star Alliance, right? Emirates, which you know, has kind of not always been friends with U.S. carriers, right? Qatar, which is new into the fold, right? Hainan Airlines, which is not part of any alliance at all, right? Alaska's always been partnered with these carriers. A few of these partnerships will probably go away with One World, but the Swiss strategy for the time being remains. And so that really opens up the airline. And I think actually as a Seattle or San Francisco based flyer, LA based, it gives you a lot more choice, right? You're not just stuck with SkyTeam's carriers. You're not just stuck with Star Alliance, right? And so yes, you have the One World, and One World is one of the smallest of the three alliances, but you also have other Alaska's other partners. So if you're an Alaska MVP flyer, it's already easier to get status, and you're still cranking miles, maybe not to the degree that you would get on One World, but definitely there. So some really, really encouraging news, and especially since Alaska is not going to dump all of their partners, but expect to see some changes in this diagram. So in looking at this, you know, there's a lot of pluses if you're an American flyer or if you're an Alaska flyer, and if you're an American flyer, because it just opens up a lot more choice. Pricing in that's a different discussion. But all these partnerships are obviously done in order to open up the market. And, you know, Alaska's a good carrier, and I'm really happy to see that they've taken this move. So new video every few days whenever there's something great to talk about. If you like this, please subscribe, smash a like in the comments, smash a dislike. You know, some people hate me, whatever. But thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you in the next video. Take care.